what has this stretch meant for you? What have you been able to do since the Ohio State series to kind of take what you learned there and hopefully apply it quickly, given the time you've had to have a little bit of a break?
Yeah, the break, I think, the Thanksgiving break came at a good time where there's 3 or 4 days in a small window in the season that, the kids can get away from what they've been doing for a long period of time. And so more on the mental side of it. Get a chance to spend time with their family, enjoy that, and then come back. And, even the first couple of days being back with practices, the energy level seems to be a little bit higher. And so, then you only have 2 weekends, and then you get Christmas break, so another 10 or 12 days. And it's amazing how fast the season goes by, but when you're involved in it, and the process, as we've always talked about, is trying to get better. And so we learned some things down in Columbus that we'll continue to work on, and we'll have to wait till February to face them again to see where we're at. But all good stuff, and all part of the process of a season. So you deal with things, you have injuries, you have good games, you have games that you'd want back, but that's what we do, and try to get better as we go through it. It doesn't get easier, though. You got Duluth coming in. They're coming off a nice weekend against Colgate, and then we're going up in Minnesota. So, but as we mentioned, a month ago, that we're looking forward to these 6 games, and we're going to be in the middle of it this weekend and find more out about ourselves.
Mark, is it obviously you never want to lose a game, but does having a loss come in before a bye week like that, does that help you more? Does it hurt you because you're not able to get back on the ice as quickly and you're dealing with, players going back home for Thanksgiving and that kind of thing, or how do you see that as a coach?
Well, if you have a break or you have a weekend off, you'd like to win that last game just to makes it, more enjoyable. You have a long period before your next game, so if it doesn't go well and you lose, there's a lot of things going in your mind as a coach. It's not like you can just leave everything at the rink and wait 8 or 10 days for your next game. Your thought process is, and especially mine is, how can we get better, even if in games that we've done well and played well. The whole thing is to try to continue to improve and make your players individually better, and then collectively as a team are you better. And so but again, as I mentioned before we went down to Columbus, it's a learning opportunity for us in all different parts of our game, and we take things away from that weekend. Although we lost both games, that's just part of the process. I don't think anybody thought we were going to go undefeated this season, and so the whole thing, and we learned that last year, is can we play our best hockey at the end, and that's what we're in the middle of.
If you specifically with breakouts, we saw at Ohio State, they were able to keep you in your zone and not make it easy for you to get the puck out, and had to settle for chips and let them recycle. Is that something you feel like, is there a fix for, or is that something you're going to have to develop, something in players that have maybe a little bit more of a patience and a little bit more of let's see how this can come out of here better?
There's fixes for most things, but when you go there, the fix is a little bit more challenging because you don't practice within the dimensions of that rink and against the team. So ever since I've been coaching, I can vividly remember after a Friday night game down in Columbus, whether it was this year or whether it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I'd be always showing video the next morning of all these turnovers, and so it's like pinball, and so if things are happening quickly, you have to take care of the puck. One of our missions in our Friday game down there was to make sure we got to the media timeout at 10 minutes, either 0-0 up 1-0. We did that, and unfortunately we took a major penalty late in the period that cost us early in the second with a couple of goals, and then we were never to capitalize on our opportunities. We had 3 or 4 lone breakaways from the red line in that, if you capitalize on 1 or 2 of those, you have an opportunity to get yourself back in the game. But again, it's this learning opportunity, and what we do as coaches in the next day's practices and building up to our next game is things that you need to improve on. And so, exiting out of our rink and our zones and Laban is a lot easier just because you have more space. It's not necessarily going to guarantee you're going to be breaking out, because there's going to be times within a game that you're going to be hemmed in. But, it makes it a little bit easier. And when you're playing against a veteran team down in Columbus, it's just hard. And so, that's the nature of our game. I mean, St. Lawrence, goes in there last weekend, and they're the number 6 team in the country. And, their first night exiting was hard. And, they gave up 11. And so it's a hard place to play, especially against the personnel they have this year.
Mark, you kind of touched on, hitting on the learning process aspect of this part of the season. I guess I'm wondering, do you feel your players embrace that learning aspect, and if they are, how does it show? What are things you're seeing that say, hey, they kind of are getting the big picture theme of what this part of the season can mean?
Well, part of that is, are they coming back after a weekend, whether we've won or we haven't had success, working hard? And so what I saw when we got finished up down in Columbus, we came back to that practice, the following Monday, and we had good energy, we had good work habits. They're still trusting the process, and as we talked to them, so if you're one of our freshman defensemen, we had a couple play both Friday and Saturday down there, and you're playing against teams that have 7 or 8 kids that are in their 5th year, and then they have 5 or 6 seniors. And you did well against that should bode well for your confidence. And so it's just this process of understanding what's going on. And we look at the wins and losses, and sometimes we can analyze them and overanalyze them. But the big thing is, are you coming back the next day and continue to work hard? Because sometimes good things take time. Success takes time, and you have to be patient with kids as long as they're doing the right things in practice. And they're going to be making mistakes in games, and the whole key is to learn from your mistakes, and hopefully you don't make them on a regular basis. And with a young team and some young players, you have to keep their confidence up. You have to keep talking with them. You have to keep encouraging them. You have to show video of some of the things that they've done well, some of the things they need to continue to work on, and then it's a process. And so every game's a new experience. This will be a new experience for my freshmen this year. They haven't played Duluth, so we got a good team coming in. They're going to be playing confidence. How are we going to be able to react to that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, I was going to say, I know you enjoy giving injury updates and sharing that kind of information, but we'll just kind of get your KK. I did want to just kind of get an update on KK. Last time we talked, you mentioned that she's been skating.
Yep.
I guess anything you can add? I mean, is she doing more now than she was doing, a couple weeks ago? I mean, how would you kind of categorize her progress and her recovery?
I would say yes, that she's definitely doing more than she was doing a couple of weeks ago. So, she's on a path to get her back into some games and before we break here. So whether that's this weekend or whether it's up in Minneapolis, there's an opportunity for her to be on the ice. And so we all wish it's, Saturday against Duluth, but, she's practicing and, doing well, and, seems to be in a good place right now. And, as we get closer to the weekend, then the trainers and the doctors will indicate to me that, she's cleared to go or she's not. So.
Just got to follow up on that. Sims was out for the second game in Ohio State. Is she okay?
Yeah, we shut her down, first period Friday night down there just because, it wasn't, we shut her down, and so she really didn't play other than, a handful of shifts the first period Friday night. And so she's in a better place right now and is practicing, and, all indications are, knock on wood, that something doesn't happen between now and then, but she's in a position that hopefully she'll get the green light to play Saturday.
And Enri and Vaser, are they on a path to playing sometime in a near future?
I would say Enri is probably on a path. When that's going to happen, I don't know. It won't be soon. So again, I'm like you. You're asking me, and I'm asking my trainer, and I'm asking my doctor, and I rely on them because they know what they're doing, and when they come on the ice in practice with no contact, you can do some things with them, but we're still in that space with those two in regards to. They both had surgeries, and both are processing and doing their rehab, and what that looks like at the end, we all wish they were playing. We all wish they were dressing, and makes our roster deeper. So, I mean, we go on Friday and Saturday down in Columbus. We weren't deep in our roster, so.
Mark, you've faced off against Duluth a bunch of times. Is this team just kind of, a couple new faces, but same Duluth team that you know what you're going to get when you face them?
Yeah, they're upperclassmen. I mean, they've been to Frozen Fours. They've had, last 2, 3, 4 years, they've played consistent. They've played well. They had a chance to win a national championship a couple of years ago. So those upperclassmen are experienced. They're not going to be intimidated at all coming in here. And, they've got a good young goaltender, and, they've got some confidence. They've played Ohio State, they've played Minnesota, they've played Colgate, so they've played some of the top teams in the country, and they've done well against them. So, our job is to continue our process, and hopefully we're healthier, Saturday than we were the last 3 or 4 weekends. And if we get in that position, then, we can get back to playing, with a deeper roster and a little bit more energy, and create some things that we weren't able to do maybe down at Columbus. So we're looking forward to the weekend. The first half comes to an end really quick, and we get challenged this weekend. We haven't played at home in a while. That'd be the other nice thing, and so it'd be nice to be in front of our home crowd. It's been a while, and then we'll wrap the first half up in Minneapolis against a good Gopher team.